Right, let's start this, shall we? Let's go. Hopefully, we can keep it on the under an hour because me and Nathan speak for a while, but it's okay.
Mate, we'll be fine.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. Some big talking points. But welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Rest. And unless Nathan's become, what is it? Nathan's what, 19? So unless he's become 3 years older in English, or Scottish, I should say, I think I've got a new co-host for the week, Pommy mate. Thank you for coming on very, very late doors. It was this morning in which I had to flick the DM through, but I appreciate you doing double duty on the Blue Broad YouTube channel this Wednesday afternoon.
Mate, as a Carlton fan and seeing Voss's changes, it's good to see that you're not scared to make the changes. So here I am,
There we go.
fresh in, added a bit of impetus. I'm looking forward to this, Ari. Looking forward to it.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good, and it's only taken till around or the third episode before one of us isn't here, which I tweeted earlier today. I think that's actually better in terms of my preseason expectations. Hopefully, we don't have too many more laid outs. Nathan, I hope he's watching. I hope he is. If he is, I'm pretty sure he'll give me some give me some shit if he is. But get well soon. I don't know exactly what's going on, but we send our regards over to the Setby household. So normally it's two wogs on this show. Now we have a wog and a pom. So I think that works. I think the contrast works.
Mate, contrasting skin colour works well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it
And then
does.
sending my best wishes to Nathan as well. Hangovers get worse as you get older, mate.
Yeah. So not well for him. Yeah, we'll try and front there now, Nathan. We'll try, but and maybe it's me. Here's the thing: if this goes over an hour, then it's definitely my fault, and it's definitely me rambling. If it doesn't, then we know who the culprit is. Then we know who the culprit is. But yeah, we're in for a pretty big episode, despite it only being round one. There has been a lot of things happening. Of course, the main thing and the main talking point is the MRO. Three people charged and has been given suspensions already, all for pretty much the same incident. So we'll be touching on that. Touching on the bump as well. Is the bump dead? Is it not? What is it exactly? Who knows? Touching on the sin bin as well, because Scott Pendlebury decides to speak on behalf of every AFL footballer and thinks that the sin bin's a good idea. So we'll have a bit of fun talking about that. We're going to speak about the MCG turf as well, because that caused some shit as well. And then some other talking points that have come out from the weekend, as well as previewing round two, which starts tomorrow night. And I don't want to think about it, despite my confidence. Despite my confidence, that's not what the show is about. So this is with the break that I get from not speaking about Carl, which is good.
Mate, it's always good. Having my own channel that does all the AFL, it's always nice to switch off and talk about
Yeah,
other football teams.
exactly. So we don't have to stress as much. But let's crack into things. Let's kickstart this off. And the main talking point out of the weekend is, of course, the MRO suspensions already. It's been round one and it's already kicked off. Of course, Shane McAdam, Buddy Franklin, and Cozzy Pickett all been given suspensions. One for Buddy, two for Pickett, and three for McAdam, which is pending, considering Adelaide will be appealing that. A lot of things to speak about. A lot of things to speak about. Now, I think on a broad level, one for Buddy, two for Pickett, three for McAdam. Your initial thoughts on those three sentences?
Well, I mean, particularly the Pickett one, I felt there was no need to do that. Like the Pickett one for me, out of all three, looked worse because I know the match review grade it differently, but I think as a partial observer, you're looking at the intent, and there is no way on God's green earth anyone with rational thought can argue Pickett was doing a football action. I mean, that looked like something out of the final moments of Royal Rumble.
Yeah, it did. It did look like something
You know
from
what I
the
mean?
WWE. You're right.
Like,
Yeah.
and McAdams, you can argue. Do you know what I mean? It was a football action. Yes, it was bad, and we don't want to see it in the game. But you've got to admit, at least you could argue he was playing football. Like Pickett, for me, on live and on the replay, if you told me Bailey Smith owed him $500 and wouldn't pay it, I'd believe that.
Yeah. It was a massive launch. He did just drive his shoulder into his head with no regard. It was weird. It was weird because it obviously they didn't show it the first time round, so it obviously showed it on the replay on the live broadcast that is, and yeah, it was so bizarre, so surreal because like you don't see that every time there is like a bump or there's like a tackle that causes concussion or like a head knock. It's always yeah, at least he's playing the ball. There was no playing of the ball, not one iota of anything related to football. It was just I'm going to launch my shoulder as hard as I can into this guy's head and see what can happen. It was weird, bizarre.
Well, I mean, it's the nature of the game, isn't it? Now, like some of them don't make sense. Do you know what I mean? And that is my biggest issue with the MRO. This is what I really hate about it: the fact that even to get reported there is such a level of interpretation from the umpires. So then, when it gets there, you should be able to look at Pickett and guarantee what it is and say, look, it's XYZ. But every time we have one, and I'm sure we'll have one tomorrow with McAdam, that they'll go a different tact and a different transient to try and defend it, which suddenly changes the precedent. We saw it with Cripps, and I'm not going to be blue-eyed. Carlton found a loophole and got away with it, but there is people who have gone to the review and failed with similar arguments. So that is my biggest thing with the AFL and umpiring in general. It's you can either be good or shit. I don't mind. I get excited either way. Be consistent though. And the
Yeah,
AFL is the biggest inconsistency in the history of sport.
yeah, and it's round one. It's round one, and we're already getting this inconsistency, which I dread to think how many more times Nathan and I are going to be sitting here on this show speaking about some ridiculous MRO decisions. I mean, I think when you look at the case in point, or you look at each case in isolation, in a sense, you had Buddy who ignored the ball, elbow to the head, and concussion was the result, and he got 1 week. Okay, you got Pickett who had no regard for the ball, left his feet, and launched his shoulder into Smith's head with clear contact to the head. That was 2, and then you had McAdams was probably the closest you could reach for like a football action, but his was probably the one with the most impact considering the momentum. So it's like, and he got 3. It's reeks of inconsistencies. Obviously, Adelaide are appealing the decision. Do you think anything will come from it, or do you reckon they're going to be praying for a or for a Patrick Cripps style kind of loophole in the laws of the tribunal or whatever it is to help them get off?
I think because of Patrick Cripps, I think we might have destroyed the review process. I get a feeling that they will have stringently negated that. So I think he'll still have 3 weeks. I mean, the Buddy one, for me, this is why, as a POM, hear me out, and I can't wait to get onto the Scott Pendlebury conversation. This is why I'm excited something like that comes about, because in my game, we have clear lines and players that constantly do the same thing genuinely get phased out because of suspensions. Buddy, what Buddy did, that was literally, he does that every game. Like, ever
Yeah,
since I've got here, I've seen Buddy's tattooed shoulder go into the jaw of a player. For the first 5 years I watched Buddy, I thought that was just normal. I didn't realise it
yeah,
was against the laws. So Buddy's another one, mate. It's a bizarre thing, and it it kills the game because I can't understand how Pickett can play the rest of the game, and he ended up kicking 2 after that, didn't he? So like
something like
an action where you've just invoked prime edge from the WWE Attitude Era, you can still play 4 quarters and kick 2 goals and help win the game is beyond my realms of comprehension.
yeah. I think this is a great point. When you look at obviously Buddies was probably the least impactful hit over the weekend. And I think his hit is only coming up in conversation as frequently as it is because of McAdam and Pickett and because they're comparing. If Pickett and McAdam's incidents didn't happen, we would just be looking at that Buddy incident thinking, yeah, I elbowed him in the head, concussion, 1 week, fair enough, right? And then we just move on. But his was the softest hit. It just happened to punish the outcome, which was a concussion. And he got the week, but the other 2 didn't, even though they were harder hits but didn't cause a concussion. But they got more, but if you're going to punish the outcome instead of the action, what do you value? It's confusing, weird. I don't even know where to go from here. It's just absurd.
Well, there's two rules with MRO. Paul nails one, and Paul's comment is great because it's amazing when the AFL makes a rule when they've got all these lawsuits pending with concussion. Amazing that there's these concussion lawsuits when your attitude is, oh, everything's safe unless someone dies. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Ridiculous rule. And the other caveat for MRO is your brand name. So, like,
yeah,
Buddy, to get 2 weeks, would probably have to borderline kill someone. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, but McAdam's not a brand name. It's easy to give him 3 weeks. It's a real bizarre thing for me. And I think the rugby did it well, and I'd never pay rugby any compliments, but rugby literally just green lined the rule, right? And that was any contact to the head, regardless, was reported, and that could be a fair tackle, that could be contesting an aerial ball, which they're now outlawed. It was it was black and white, so there was no way you could say, "Oh, I didn't do that." It's a football action. That was the rule. That's what AFL have to do. If AFL take this game serious, it's black and white, some of your rules.
yeah. But I mean, how black and white? I think we might have had this conversation a little bit like a while ago about the how can you have rules in such a over umpired game and in such an over analyzed game with everything? Where does the line draw between being grey area and then black and white? Can you have black and white rules? Can you have black and white punishments in a game that has so many variables? Because is it like if I bum someone and they're fine while they're in the air, but the contact on the ground knocks them out and gives them concussion? What is that? Is that kind of looked at the same way? Is that in the same way as if I would have elbowed them in the head and they got concussed on the spot or got knocked out on the spot? Because there's so many variables. It's one
Well,
of
I think you
those
can.
things.
I always think you can sacrosanct the head. So do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the sacrosanct the head first and foremost, and just be like any contact on the head is reportable when it's not a contested situation. Like the cripple one's a great example. That happened about 7 times this week, and the players went shoulder to shoulder and were fine. Calamachi was unlucky that he hit an immovable object and he got hurt from it. And I'm sure Cripps felt just as bad as everyone else. We know Cripps is a fair player, but it looked worse. I'd imagine if we went back in time and say Archie played the game out, he was fine. There were some big hits in the Richmond Carlton game with Dusty and Cowan. I'd imagine if they carried on the game, you'd say, oh, it was a dangerous bomb, but it was okay. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Everyone was all right. And that's the grey you've got when it's outcome, because you're basically saying it's all right as long as you don't die, but you don't know if the victims of Buddy feel that in 10, 15 years' time when they're
exactly.
trying to remember their wedding day or
Yeah,
trying to remember important events and concussion signs happen. It's probably the Buddy incidents that cause that, and less so the serious Crips ones.
yeah. It's the culmination. Like it's research has been happened for ages in multiple sports, combat sports in particular, and even like NFL rugby in this sport as well. It's not necessarily the one hit knockout concussion that can affect people the most. It's just the repeated head knocks, and it's almost worse because if you get if like I'm not going to speak because I've never been knocked unconscious, and I don't think at least I've never had a serious concussion, so obviously I can't speak from experience, but like it's almost in a position where you'd rather be knocked out and then have a blanket like, yes, you've got a concussion, you are knocked out, you need to sit out for XYZ amount of time, rather than having a head knock this week and then you're feeling a bit dazed, but you feel right to play. Then the next week you get another head knock. Once again, you feel a bit dazed, but then you're right to play, and then you get a head knock the week after. And that culmination of head knocks can almost end up being worse than if you did just get knocked out flat out, which once again goes back to the point of what's a more serious outcome? And do you punish the outcome or do you punish the action? I also think this is a fantastic comment. With the lawsuits going out, with the lawsuits happening right now, it was the worst time for players to be idiots and be stupid and do all this stuff. I don't. I think it will be a little bit harsh to make an example out of these guys because I think it's a bit kind of wrong place, wrong time. But really, this should have happened a long time ago. Like the fact that we're still, with the knowledge that we've got of head knocks and with the knowledge that we've got of concussion, how are we still in a position where we're still treading water and finding the line when it comes to head knocks? I think the example of players should have been made a long time ago, personally.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. And I also think that it's a bit like the seatbelt law. Me and my mate were talking about seatbelts the other day, with it being a legal requirement to drive a car with a seatbelt. And I was saying I've never been in a car accident. So, like, for me, I don't understand. If I was using experience and you said, oh, you've got to wear a seatbelt, my response would probably be like it was 30 years ago. Never had a car accident. Do you know what I mean? So what's the
Yeah,
point? I can't prove it saves lives. If I was stupid, and that's what I thought. When you look at concussion, when these areas are grey, I look at it the other way. If they're grey and I'm a player contesting a ball, I'm going to slightly prepare if I know your buddy that you don't care about going for my head. If you make it sacrosanct, though, I can keep myself safe knowing 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the AFL won't go for my head, so I can put my body over and protect my vital organs. I'm fine. When it's grey, you've got players double guessing yourselves, which opens up to ACLs. It opens up to other serious debilitating lifestyle injuries, which is proven in tackling from juniors. I just think it's a shitstorm, and I just can't believe the AFL, as soon as the NFL had the concussions and every other league, even soccer, started putting a lot of research into is heading the ball creating concussion. How the AFL is still at the stage now where we don't know what is a ban, what is illegal. No one really knows.
yeah.
I don't think the players do either.
No, no, they don't. And I mean, like to your point, I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was reading up, especially in the fallout of all this, and I was quite interested in the effect that concussions can have. And it was I was listening to, I think it might have been a podcast, and it was put to me it was said very black and white. It said, if you do your ACL, we can fix that, right? We have the technology to fix that, right? You may not play footy again, but you will be able to walk again and function to a relatively normal level. If you break your leg, 9 times out of 10, same thing. Break your ankle, break your arm, your shoulder, even your back, same thing. We can't fix the head. We do not know how to fix the brain. So, in like the fact that this should be the number one priority because we can't fix it. We don't know how to cure. Like obviously, CTE is rife, especially in very heavily contact sports. The fact that we don't know how to fix it and we don't know how to cure it and we don't know how to treat it should make it the number one priority. But for some reason, it's not. It is one of those things. And I think it moves on to the question about the bump and whether or not the bump is dead. This is, of course, a contact sport, and of course, the bump has been a massive thing in AFL for a long time. I mean, when we look at when people from overseas think about this sport, they think about all the no pads and the bodies flying everywhere. What constitutes a bump? Is it dead? Is it outcome based? Is it action based? What are your thoughts? Because to me, it's still a very, very massive grey area where you can bump if it's in like a marking contest, but you can't hit the head. But sometimes you can hit the head if it's a football action. But what constitutes a football action? And why don't you just tackle? But like, it's just been a massive shitstorm for about a decade, and we still don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean this with love because I reckon someone will get offended by what I'm about to say, but I think maybe being 37 this year, I have the privilege of kind of not being quite old, but also I'm not young anymore. I'm in
No.
that
You're
middle
young. You're,
bracket.
you're young to me, so
I'm that tier. I'm that mid
yeah,
tier.
yeah,
But I remember when I was a kid watching football and back home, and it was normal that centre backs were big, fat, beer swelling idiots who had no football talent whatsoever, apart from they looked like the kind of guy that loved hurting people. And we had crunching tackles, used to have the shoulder to shoulder contact, which at times looked like a clothesline. Players got special dispensation, like Gary Pallister, because he was slow, he was cumbersome. Oh, he didn't mean to take your head off, Ian Wright. He's just fat and slow. It's not his fault. He's
he's
a centre
clumsy.
back, and
He's
everyone
clumsy.
yeah,
Yeah,
but everyone accepted it. And then
yeah,
now I look at centre backs, and we've got players like Ruben Dias, who are probably better than some of the strikers I watched as kids on the ball.
yeah.
And I think culturally, and this is where the AFL goes wrong with 90% of its rules, it looks at the older clientele who will say, "Oh, I miss the days of kick mark. I miss the days of 180 versus 172 with 50-cent beers that were pints with glasses." And I don't think the AFL realise that they're always going to watch football. Some of them are members for 50 years. You could change the name of the football club and they will still buy memberships because it's now ingrained. It's about adapting. And the bump, it's a great part of the sport when it's a football action, but look at the top teams who have come out today and said the bump isn't even in their vocabulary, because I thought Goodwin was a genius because we tackle properly and we've got good structure. So we don't have to do it because we're actually really good at the game. And that is where I think the AFL need to realise that, yes, you're going to get a lot of the public who say, back in my day, they used to have a tear up at the centre and then we'd go to Vic Park and headbutt people. The game's moved on, though, and so has society. So the game is a lot more skillful, fast-paced. People don't like the violence anymore. They're starting to wane away anyway. So, for heaven's sake, AFL, just make it clear. And I don't understand why they do. And I think a lot of Australian sport is driven by a culture that is almost a fairy tale as opposed to the product. And I'll tell you what, you sold this game to a European, we like our rules. We love rules. Love them. So when they're grey, we switch off. It turns us off. And I think the bump, I do think it's dead. And is that sad? Maybe. But who cares? If the game is fast-paced and enjoyable, the product is still there.
Well, if we want a game, right? If we want to watch football, if we want to watch high-quality football for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, it's going to have to die eventually. And the reason is because there's alternatives now. There is alternatives for 15 or for 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, especially now in a climate where we are so much more aware of head trauma and the damages that can cause. In the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, you got a concussion play on. What was that? I think it might have been John Kennedy Sr., maybe. Any injury above the neck doesn't count. That was the rationale. So it was that was ingrained to kids, and that was ingrained to parents from very, very young ages. So it was like that's not even a relevant factor. Our kids are just going to play AFL just because of what it is, right? Whereas now you're looking at parents who are aware of the issues that concussions can have and about brain trauma, and are looking at their 7, 8, 9-year-old kid and thinking, they can play basketball, they can play soccer, they can play golf, cricket, whatever. Far less contact, and you're not going to forget your fucking your marriage day or your wedding day, I should say. There you go. There's a bit of a mind blank, but you're not going to forget your wedding day by the time you're 50 because you've been hit in the head 12 times in the matter of a week, right? That's like you said, the generational thing. We're living in the past in that mindset.
Mate, you've only got to look at Paddy McCartin's interview when he retired.
Exactly.
And he's talking about that he goes to brush his teeth in the morning and then forgets why he's there. And there's been times that he's walked downstairs naked and his wife's led him back upstairs. And the guy's 24 years old at the time, right? Let that sink in, right? A 24-year-old. My pop passed away from dementia. He was in his 90s when he was at that stage, which you kind of understand. But 24 is prime of your life. Do you know what I mean? He should be playing Sudoku while driving and still driving straight and not hitting anyone. That's the awareness factor. For me, I love the bump. The bump is good. We all enjoy it. But let's be honest, it's going to get to the stage, like you say, that eventually parents are getting more wise. They're reading. They're getting more educated. There is less of this mentality of when I was a kid, get up, don't be soft, as that was a very common phrase. And now we're becoming a lot more politically correct and aware of people's feelings and our helps. That's going to die. And eventually you'll get people who would rather put their kids to play basketball, to play tennis, because it's safe. Because end of the day, it is a dangerous game. And it's a good thing it's dangerous because it separates the skillful from the meek, maybe. But it's not football. And it's like when I've had Australians argue with me on Twitter going, but if we removed heading from your game, Pom, you'd flip off. And I'm like, well, heading is a part of the game, though.
It'd be like removing the handball.
Yeah,
literally.
I'm like in AFL though, bump isn't a part of the game. You can't score from it. You can
Yeah,
defend from it. Like
yeah. It's
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 not
like
really a part of the game.
yeah, it's like you could win a premiership without laying one bump the whole year. You cannot win the title without headering the ball once.
Exactly.
There's your black and white example and explanation of it.
Yeah. So like for me, it's you look at like Jeff there. Have you ever bounced by a Yorker though? Been bounced by a Yorker? Like, do you know what I mean? Like cricket though, they have totally like look at cricket. We had the Phil Hughes incident, truly horrific, and it was what the third death on a cricket field, the
Freak
first that
incident.
was a player in the
Yeah,
history of the game, and cricket is what 300 years old.
yeah.
And
Freak incident.
they went mental. They revolutionized the helmet. They made it mandatory at all forms of levels. Do you know what I mean? Mandatory replacements at grassroots level. They did the right thing, not just by these professional footballers, but by
The game.
Your Uncle Dave, who plays Dandenong Fourths. They protected him in the
Yeah.
same rule book. And the AFL can't even get black and white rules for pros. So I go and watch Wyndham Vale and stuff play. They're thugs. They're still guys uppercutting people.
Yeah.
Like, where is the safety of the whole hyperbole? Is my question.
I think it goes back to what you said before about the marketing and the way that the AFL portrays itself. It is still very in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even when you speak about football to the older generation, they say, "Oh, how good was it back in the 90s and in the 80s?" And in some respects, I would agree. Like forwards kicking 100 goals plus a year is exciting for the game. You had so many talented players, right? But in the same vein, it's like it is so much more skillful today. It is so much more tactical and so much more interesting to watch, especially if you are involved in the tactical side. Of course, you are. We all know that you are, right? So it just has to evolve, and the AFL is still so far behind, and there needs to be evolutions in the game. And one potential evolution is a sin bin. Now, obviously, this has been in the talks for a long time, not in the talks, but like has been a controversial subject for a long time, brought up again by Scott Pendlebury, I think it was earlier on this week, in response to, of course, what's happened over the weekend. And now, we obviously don't know how it would work. This obviously hasn't been a proper thing put like that the AFL have spoken about formally, but we don't know how it would work. I assume it would be a 5 minute type of yellow card system, similar to how it's used in rugby. I'm pretty sure. Um, Despite what we've said, I would lean to my initial reaction is I wouldn't want a sin bin because I feel like you can punish players harsh enough to the point and have a black and white ruling about the bump to the point, or to head knocks, I should say, to the point where it is the ultimate deterrent and is completely outlawed. And then when an incident does happen, it's this is how many weeks you've got because of X, Y, Z, and then don't like that is the ultimate deterrence because obviously the punishment will be far greater. What are your thoughts? I think you might have mentioned before, but are you for or against the sin bin?
I think there needs to be a in-game deterrent. My fear with sin bins is knowing how tactical the game is in Australia. I wouldn't be surprised there is some coaches that exist in there. Round 23, 10 minutes to go. Player X is taking the piss, and they say to one of their players, "Tell you what, mate, go high, go hard, scrub him out of the game, we'll win this game." And I'd fear that the 5-10 minute sin bin may be manipulated a little bit. I'd personally stray to a yellow and red card system. And I think in the real world, if the AFL put its hand in its pockets and got some proper cameras so we could watch
Yeah,
replays, I think it would be very easy to deduce these infringements in game. And a yellow card could be a basic report. Red card could be your picket incidents, your non-footballing actions that are clear that they
yeah,
ain't anything to do with football. And that is a mandatory, whether you review it or not, 2-game ban. And
yeah,
it's literally, and because somehow soccer players, amazingly, can accept a red card and go, okay, the referee was wrong, but I'll take the 2 games and I'm not going to cry about it.
yeah,
I don't understand why AFL, you can retract it. Like, getting things wrong is a good thing because
yeah. You learn.
Pickett, like McAdam appealing it. If he doesn't want 3 weeks off, don't do something stupid, mate. It's quite simple.
Yeah, literally. I saw, obviously, this is once again another topic that has been brought up is helmets. I don't think that's the issue. I mean, we've seen how many NFL players are suffering with CTE even worse than what AFL players have. I know it's obviously a different sport, but I also think helmets give a lot of people false sense of security, especially if it's like, oh, I'm wearing a helmet, that's fine. Whereas it's your brain is still rattling against your skull inside when you get hit, regardless of how much headgear you're wearing. I don't think that is the answer, and I think if it was, I'd like to think the AFL would have at least been on the nose of it a little bit more and been on that a little bit earlier and potentially implemented it if it was the answer. Of course, you do have players that wear helmets. Caleb Daniels one, Angus Brayshaw's another, and other players have played and worn helmets. Probably that's more personal preference, and also it would help protection of the actual skull in that respect. Like if you like, I know people who have fractured cheekbones or broken noses, etc., wear helmets or wear protection for that regard. But I don't think it's a necessary prevention of concussion and potential head trauma. Now, on the topic of the sin bin, I've got 5 bumps, tackles, incidents from the AFL in the previous years, all within the last 20 years, and most of them are pretty famous bumps, or famous incidents. So I don't think I'll be shocked by the clips I'm going to bring up. And I just want your, and obviously people watching the comments as well, just give me a yes or no, sin bin or not, and also what would your sin bin be? Would it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Would it be for the rest of the quarter, 20 minutes, whatever? So let's bring up the first one. Let's bring up the first one, and we'll see if this constitutes a sin bin or not.
Docko rolls out of there, kicks it. Not the best of kicks for Duncan.
Oh, the big mummify.
By golly, Durham! The great Lou Richards.
So that, of course, big shame on for doing what he does best, and that's why he had an AFL career for however long he did. Your initial thoughts?
My favourite thing about Mumford is when he used to absolutely murder someone, is he'd land with his hands around them, so it looked like in quick time, oh, that was a fair tackle.
Yeah. Oh, it was football action. So yeah, what are your thoughts, sin bin or not for Mumford in that respect? To me, I'm leaning. Well, I actually don't know. I want to hear your thoughts first, to be honest.
Well, I mean, they were both contesting a ball that was in contest, weren't they? Technically. Yeah. And I don't think Mumford's got the breaks. But I think in real time, I'm going to be fair and become everything I hate, an umpire, everything I hate. But in real time, if I was on the ground without the benefit of a replay, the initial thing, it would be a sin bin, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And what would your sin bin be, just out of curiosity? Would it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
I'd like a 10-minute sin bin because I think that deeply affects you.
Yeah. So that's 10 minutes with 17. Yeah. I assume. With one less. Those in the comments. Sin bin, yes. I would tend to agree. And he could flatten everyone that's ever played AFL football, I'm pretty sure. If I came into contact with him, God help me, put it that way. All right, so that's the first one. And obviously, Mitch Duncan was the man who got mummified. Pretty sure there was obviously concussion involved in that. And that was the archetypal bump, or at least a collision. I'm going to bring one up now that will be interesting to speak about, considering the way in which it's unfolded. So this one is going to come up now.
They have been dominant over this terrific football side. It has continued to the very end.
Just here, straight to Taylor.
Bartel gone
Thank you.
down on his shoulder here.
Hang on.
So that was Jimmy Bartel in the game, I think about 2015. Massive tackle, not a bump. That was a football action, at least the fact that it was a tackle. I know that was very, very late on in the game. I think it was only a couple of seconds to go. But he was, obviously, as you can tell, knocked unconscious and did miss the next game, I think, with concussion as well. That one, to me, is a little bit of a grey area because of it was a tackle. It wasn't a bump. I'm aware the head, obviously, it was a concussion and he was knocked out. Where do you sit on that one? Because that one is very different to the Mumford one.
I think totally play on, fine. It was a proper tackle. He had his arms around him. I think he attempted to do the right thing. And I think I'm of the school, irregardless of the outcome of the player, because even if we safety this game, people are still going to get concussed. They fly 80 metres in the air to catch a ball, for God's sake. Not everyone can land that. So if we start going mental, for me, if that happens in game, that is the risk these players get paid 6 figures a year for. They know sometimes doing the right thing will go wrong.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when it comes to player getting knocked out, I think there is a little bit of a grey area, but that's obviously something for the AFL to decide. I also am a fan of this comment here. A different punishment if it's intentional, if it's incidental, if it's a major incident, or whether it's a minor incident. Something in that, in my opinion, as well. So yeah, so we've got Mumford, Simbin. I can't remember what Hawthorn player or which Hawthorn player it was, but that one is not. So let's go with the
game. This.
Right. I knew it'd be right up your alley. Let's go to a bump that lives rent free. This lives rent free in Mr. Terry Degani's head. I'm 99% sure. So if he's watching, let's trigger him one more time by showing this.
Kick forward, Dangerfield. Oh, in hard, Murphy and Dangerfield crashing into one another. Murphy's really been banged up here.
Just watch this again. I mean, there's just... They both got in hard. They both got in low. I mean, it's what we want to see. Two blokes just going for the ball, but there's just no protection.
So that, of course, I'm sure if Terry's watching, he's going to hate that. But yeah, Murphy, Dangerfield going for the ball, ground ball, big incident. Murphy broken collarbone or broken shoulder, misses a number of weeks. To me, that's completely fair game. I assume it would be the same opinion for you.
Yeah, for me, that's 50-50. Both of you touch the ball. One of you snaps your leg. Other one doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't take that out of the game. They've got to contest the ball. I would argue that if you watch that in slow motion, Murphy pulls his head away, which would go back to my argument earlier of if the players knew the head was sacrosanct, they'd be able to protect themselves a lot smarter, knowing that there isn't a chance my head's going to fly off in this contest. So for me, that's a football in action. These things happen. Army men die in training because some idiot discharges their weapon. It's the nature of the beast. We can't stop it.
It is. I would agree. As much as it hurts me to agree with that, I think that is a fair bump.
Sorry, Terry.
Yes, sorry, mate. Yeah, two players going for the ball. Fair bump in my eyes. Now, we've got two more. Both do lead to concussion and both do lead to people getting knocked out. We're going to bring up a one that's quite recent. I think it may be the most recent one on this list. So let's bring this up now.
Rewarded for his hard work. Leading the free kick. Martin, the handball, didn't need to play on there. He had Robinson right there with him, but he keeps going. Oh. And a collision made. He has flattened Stephen Martin. They play on the Brisbane Lions, and it's inside 50 to reach.
About to be on here, boys.
Yeah, it's against Stephen May, and Stephen Martin has been laid out and hasn't moved.
So, of course, yeah, Stephen May running full pelt and knocking Stephen Martin out cold. That, to me, is night and day. Goes past the ball, leaves his feet, jumps in the air, head contact with the head with May's shoulder. Sinbin every day of the week.
Mate, Sinbin, 25 years to life, no parole. Mate, I mean, there was no need in that. That is what I'm saying about the bump. Bumps are fine, like the Murphy danger, running towards the ball, fine. Do you know what I mean? Shoulder to shoulder, happens. There was no need. He could have stood his ground. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He could have spoiled. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, he doesn't have to get out of the way, but yeah, for me, that's horrific.
Yeah, I agree. Eyes only for the man, not for the ball. Completely collects him. Now, all of these, yeah, straight red. That's a 5-game ban. All of those have been in non-marking contests, which I think changes it a little bit. Considering the one I'm going to bring up, I'm 99% sure it's a marking contest, and if it isn't, I'm going to look like an idiot. But there's a very famous, probably one of the most infamous bumps or the most infamous collisions in a long, long time. And this one, I don't really like to watch it, considering the aftermath of it. But this is a very infamous hit, and it could change could change the perception of what we think is a sin bin or not. So let's bring this up now.
You're right. If they can get him fit and playing well, suddenly looks impressive. Lewis has not moved. Wonderful courage from both players. It was a terrible pass. It put him in danger. Spills one.
So Jordan Lewis is absolutely out cold and completely out of it, right? Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, a massive hit. The reason why I say this may change the perception is because of the fact it was in a marking contest. And because of the fact that when it's in a marking contest, you kind of have to expect both players in the contest to go full pelt for the ball. Otherwise, what's the point? However, when it's such a big collision like that, that to me is blurred lines for me. That is a grey area. And I think that would be the sentiment shared by a lot of people. Would you agree?
I think it makes it hard, but I would stick to my original two processes. Is it part of the game? Indeed it is. Contesting the aerial ball probably is the biggest part of our great game. Is it an accident? I don't think you could argue there was any intent there. His eyes are on the ball. You can see him even do that wafting motion as he realises he's overcooked the jump and he's missing the ball. So you can see the little disappointment grab of desperation. Mate, play on for me. Fans will hate me. That would be play on. Come on, carry on.
I mean, does he need to jump that high? Could he not just contest the ball running back with the flight? I don't know. I would...
Real time, I think you can see Lewis is going to get there first. He's had to leave his feet to try and dive and take the grab. So I think it's heroic of both men. Like where Stephen May, for me, see Anthony saying holding his ground. He didn't need to leave the ground there. Like Stephen May is about the same size, body mass wise, as Stephen Martin. Yeah. He could have braced. Do you know what I mean? Taken the contact. He didn't have to jump in the air and knee first. I think in that situation, both players are doing the right thing by the game.
Yeah, I would agree, but it's borderline for me. And if it was given a sin bin, I don't think I would complain purely off the fact that Jordan Lewis, that was horrific to look at, right? The aftermath of that. So we've come to obviously. I think we've agreed on all five. So the Dangerfield and Murphy one is all clear, no issue there. Stephen May, five game ban and no parole, as you said. Mumford, once again, very similar. Bartel, that's probably the one in which I would maybe disagree with, considering the fact that Bartel was knocked out, and it was a little bit of a driving action into the ground. You gave that the all clear, and then I think we both agree. Despite my hesitancy, the Jordan Lewis one, considering it was a marking contest.
What position did you play at soccer, Riley? Ari?
Riley, wow. I floated, but I started off my career as like a winger, and then I lost all pace and played as a centre-back / DM.
You see, I knew it was a centre-back. I knew because you've been too kind. Honestly, I would just say, I think the Bartel one, and this is a great argument here. The Bartel one and the last one you didn't like. It's the injury. It's the action. Like if Jordan Lewis got up after that, shook his hand and said, good knock, mate, you'd be like, oh, wow, what two heroes. It's the fact that like he looks like he's clinging on for dear life, God bless him. Do you know what I mean? Like it looks like one of the scenes out of Saving Private Ryan, the D-Day scene. Yeah. Like that makes it look bad. And it's what I say about VAR. It's why I hate VAR in round ball. Because sometimes on replay, when the guy's Achilles is snapping in front of your eyes, it looks worse than if he got up and he was fine. You'd be like, okay, it's a contest. So that's the big thing. And I'm glad Anthony's backing me. You know what it's like, Anthony. 80s, it was mental. Do you know what I mean? It was a different lifestyle. Like, people were different then. Do you know what I mean? Like, you look, I always say when people say, what were the 80s like? Why was it different, Pom? Wasn't that different. I'm going to give you one band. Look at Wham, right? Look at Wham. Tight shirts, skin-tight black pants. Women idolise George Michael. Even I find him hot, and I'm a male. Doesn't happen anymore, though. Times have changed. I mean, if Sam Smith does that now, you've got the Vatican Church up in arms. Do you know what I mean? Like, so times have now changed. So that's the sad thing, but a very good thing. So, like, for me, yeah, I'm with you, mate. We've got to move on to proper modern day, fast paced AFL.
I agree. And yeah, I feel like we're going to be revisiting this conversation. Maybe not you and I, but me and Nathan and myself will definitely be revisiting this conversation. I can guarantee you in future weeks. We've somehow spoken for 45 minutes, so let's try and get through the rest of these talking points relatively quickly. Or mine. I think Nathan would definitely say it's my fault. Briefly, let's speak on this, shall we? Because I blamed Ed Sheeran. I made the caveat on this week's pod, on last week's episode, I think it was, that if Carlton didn't win, I'd blame it on Ed Sheeran, and we didn't win, but we also didn't lose. So I don't know how much blame I can put on him. But do you think that the reaction to the turf is do you think the commentary about the turf is an overreaction, or do you think it's fair considering, obviously, Harry Mackay slips in a very crucial moment in an area where the turf was relayed. Tom Stewart goes down with an injury. He'll miss a number of weeks. Sam de Koning as well for Geelong went down with a very innocuous injury because of the turf. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's an overreaction or a fair criticism?
I think massive underreaction. Massive. I'm going to put it in this scale. World Cup final at Qatar, right? 5 minutes in, the 2 days before the World Cup final, they play a Taylor Swift open air concert. 2 minutes into the World Cup final, you get Fernandez gets the ball. He ducks past a French midfielder, Rabiot, and he plays a through ball. Messi streaming through. He beats his man. He's one-on-one. Nowhere he slips, snaps his ACL. Qatar wouldn't exist because the next day, 8 million Argentines would invade and Qatar would now be part of Argentina, right? Football, Arsenal versus Manchester United, Wembley Stadium, 2 days before the FA Cup. They play the Take That reunion concert. Any Arsenal or Man United player does an ACL because they've just literally put fake turf loosely laid over. Mate, London wouldn't exist anymore. It'd be like London's burning 2.0. It'd be like, it would literally be the end of days. So This is the biggest underlined sport in Australia. Nothing comes close to it. This is our EPL, our World Cup. The fact, and I know it was booked 2 years ago, the fact the AFL couldn't say, okay, let's push the round back a week, right? Yeah. Because it's been a postponed COVID concert. So we've known about it. And not only did they do that, knowing that, they added an extra fucking round. And then they shorted pre-season. Who runs the AFL and why is it all these problems? And this is what I say all the time. Honestly, sport is for the working class, for the common person, man and woman. Please, world of sport, stop letting private school prep people make decisions at elite level sport. Happened in golf. No kids played it. They've got normal people in now who understand the bottom line. Retention is incredible. Please, AFL, 4 days after Ed Sheeran's concert, and you're playing the biggest game of the calendar, and every player is dying. God knows what would have happened if Carlton and Richmond were pants that game and both played high-level intensity football. There might have been a fatality there based on that Geelong game. I can't believe no one's kicking off more. I nearly cancelled my Carlton membership. I was that fuming with the surface.
Look, I think about it like this. Firstly, I went to the Ed Sheeran concert. I went on the first night. It was pretty good. I rated Ed Sheeran. Yeah, it is my fault. I enabled it, and I actually disagree. I think Ed Sheeran's quite good. So I actually credit him for more of my happier moments in life. Not on Thursday night though. I did blame him solely. He was the only reason we didn't win that game. Trust me. But yeah, I think it's. I just think it's ridiculous how the best ground in the country, right? One of the more prestigious games. Like if this was fucking GWS versus North Melbourne on a Sunday 4:40, who cares? They can play in Darwin on a cow paddock for all I can, right? This is the biggest game with two of the bigger clubs. First game of the season. This is your your staple product. Like, this is your game of the year that brings people in, right? The fact that they just couldn't foresee this happening is a joke, and I agree with you. I think it's just ridiculous. Like, I actually think it's absurd. The fact that it's probably still not even 100% right 2 weeks after. I know groundskeepers are probably yelling at me if any are watching. I haven't been 50 feet from a power tool in my life, right? So I wouldn't know how to landscape for the life of me. But I assume it's more than a 1 week fix, especially on a surface that big. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. And the fact that we only had one major injury from it is a pretty good tick in my book, considering the potential risk of injury was a lot higher. I was surprised we didn't see 3 or 4 players go down with knocks. Sam De Koning managed to see out the game. I think Tyson Stengel may have injured himself because of it. I know he definitely had some knock. I'm not sure whether or not it was because of the turf or not, but yeah, just one of those things where the AFL just another stupid thing that was so avoidable, but the AFL were just like, who cares? I know they drew in 210,000 people or whatever it was, but like, come on,
mate. It's unacceptable. And what annoys me, because everyone knows I love a Gil bash. I'm number one for Gil bash because I can't stand the bloke, right? But every time the AFL makes a rule in the last 10 years, they act shocked when it backfires. So, great one, man on the mark. This year, we've got to stop people fake handballing. Go back and watch Blue Abroad. It's like February. They talk about that rule, and I said, I can't wait till someone realises if you fake a handball, you get 50-metre penalties. And they act shocked it's manipulated. They act shocked when they brought the medical sub-rule, and you had Geelong players saying, I've got a migraine, and cheating the system. They acted shocked. 205,000 people at the G 5 days before round one was going to fuck up the turf. Do they know how grass works? Gil's got a membership at some of the most prestigious golf courses in Australia. Does he repair his own divots? Does he know what happens to grass when it's sodden? Mate, honestly, you know what? We're lucky we only had them injuries. And how easy would it have been? Worst case, everyone plays away. You play the games at the Marvel, count and play West Coast in West Coast, change round one. Worst case, change it. But the AFL, with 2 years of knowledge, add an extra round and shorten pre-season, and then they're shocked the ground isn't right. These guys are serial idiots. I have never seen anyone as stupid as the administration of the AFL. It is actually amazing. This is why Australia is the greatest country on earth, because diversity exists so strongly. Idiots can run the biggest sporting organisation in Australia. Congratulations. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put it better myself if I tried. Yeah, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. Just, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, let's just move on. I don't think I can add any more. Are you, though? Are you sorry? Are you really?
Nah. Yeah. I'll take the presidency over, though. I'm quite happy to do that. Be the easiest gig in the world.
Right, okay. How would you have, obviously you're a big golf fan, how would you have sorted the turf out? Or would you just not have just delayed round one like a rational human?
I would have extended pre-season by 2 weeks.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I'd have 2 years to plan for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe he just forgot. Maybe it was like he put it on like a sticky note on his laptop and just forgot. Just like,
might have been like during COVID. Do you remember when he used to do daily press conferences to tell us that we'd have a press conference tomorrow when he had more information? And it was just like Gil just like doing the press conference by the end of it.
Yeah, the announcement for the announcement. He's a master, and I actually don't mind Gil, but Gil is up there with one of the most proficient people at speaking for a long period of time without saying anything. Without saying anything meaningful.
Gil is like what would happen if Joe Biden had more vitamin E.
Right. I haven't thought about that comparison before.
Did you know what I mean? Like, what he's got, like, honestly, I mean, the guy's even delaying his own leaving do. Like, I can't stand it. Please, give me anyone. And then you look at some of the guys replacing him, and you know, I'm going to be on this show in 2030 going, fuck, bring Gil back. That's what you know.
I'd clip this and send it to you. That's okay.
Can't believe it. Like, honestly, what a shock. People nearly died on a pitch that doesn't even stick together. Who would have thought? Shocked.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. We speak for ages. Let's get rapid fire. Obviously, four tall forwards. Really, the first time this has been properly kind of implemented as a tactic by teams. Of course, teams have gone with 3 tall forwards in a ruck. Obviously, the Dogs went for 4 talls plus English in the ruck. Darcy, Jamara, Norton, and Lobb. Didn't work. They were, with all due respect, they were poor, very poor, both ends. And I don't know how many points they scored, but even without Stephen May, their forward line was absolutely not coherent and could not find their rhythm. I don't know how many goals the four of them kicked between them, but it wasn't many. You're the resident tactician on AFL YouTube. I assume you'd think that this is a dumb thing that's never going to work.
I think you can have definitely too much registered forwards. I mean, to be fair, is Rory Lobb a forward, or is he the dad of Marty McFly when he went back to the 80s?
Yeah, well, I said this last week. I said he's 208 centimeters. Why is he not a ruckman? Why? Like, you're too tall. You're too tall to not be a ruckman. I'm sorry. That doesn't work.
I think there is an argument that forwards work. I think you look at Melbourne, I've covered this at length. For me, they have found the cheat code of zonal systems. We know people resting forward kick goals. So much so that JL at Fremantle now thinks Fife's a forward because it works in 10-minute spurts. So for me, the most important thing is it does work in stages of the game. Richmond were battered by Grundy and Gorn resting there with Richmond's tools. It destroys a zonal system because it means that someone has to go and man it up. When you're big, zones don't work. So it works, but as a full-time tactic, the Dogs, I said that they were bottom 6. They're bottom 6 material. They are cooked if they keep playing that. And I'm all for it, because can you find me a more irrelevant club in the AFL?
Well, as a good friend of mine has recently said and has made me giggle, you can have your Marcus Bontempellis, you can have your Jack McRae's, you can have your Tom Liberatores, but when you've got sweet fuck all at either end, nothing's going to happen. So I think that's the definition of the Dogs at the moment.
Beveridge hasn't been the same since Tom Morris goes, "It's not your press conference though, mate. It's the AFL's." And since then, Beveridge has lost it.
Yeah, he's living rent free, that man, as well. Which is obscene to think, considering. But the fact that also, like, is Sam Darcy a forward? No, he's not. He's a defender in my books. I think that he does his best job behind the ball. Rory Lobb's a ruckman. Aaron Norton can't kick straight, and Jamar is a child. So I don't really think 4 talls are going to work. It's not like you've got Cameron Hawkins, Kerno, and Mackay up there. You've got 4, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 forwards at the very maximum, and they're very inconsistent as well. So I think it's a recipe for disaster. I think they need to move away from it. But who do you drop? If you had to drop one of the 4, or if you had to reposition it, how would you go about doing that?
Rory Lobb.
Yeah,
mate. Mate, not many people. Not many people go from Perth and be pants and then come to Victoria and are even more pants. He's Levi Casbolt with bleached hair.
That is a comparison.
And that's an insult to Levi.
I mean, he can. I don't think he can mark the ball as good as Levi. That's probably about it. They probably kick about the same as well. So so would you just drop Lobb just flat out, even though they traded a second round pick for him or whatever it was?
Controversial opinion. Ken Hinkley, he's under pressure because, the list is really good. Voss, the list is really good if he doesn't make final sacking. Beveridge has won 1 flag with a list that is teeming for the last 5 years. Yeah. McRae, Dunkley and Bont. That's tasty. And it's been the definition of mediocre. Like, honestly, lay off Chris Scott's 2 flags in 20 years because that Dogs list is primed and it plays garbage football.
Yeah, I mean, they should have won one. And I think their list is coming to a point now where he's panicking. We spoke about this pre-show about a certain other coach that may or may not have panicked recently. But I think Beveridge has panicked and he's just like, I don't know what to do. Let's just get whoever, like, the best free agent is on the market. I think they need to move Sam Darcy back. I think they might now, considering Liam Jones has injured himself. Good to see Jonesy back out there, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. I don't know who they've got. I think they've got the Saints on a Friday night maybe. So
It's going to be tough that against Ross, because Ross is the master in the basics and master in monotony.
He is, but once again, you can't really. There's not a way to tactically stop a person being able to take a mark between three blokes. So if anyone's gonna, or if there's any team that could potentially really just disregard all the defensive tactics and just dominate in contested marks, when you got four talls, surely one of them is able to take it. But who knows? Maybe that's an order's job. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. We have ticked over the hour mark, so Nathan, maybe it is me. Maybe it is me.
It's me. It's definitely me. Me and Terry go over all the time.
Yeah, I reckon we could sit here for 3 hours and just chat shit, to be honest. That would be a podcast, wouldn't it? It would just be me laughing at your analogies for half of the time.
Do a Guild podcast.
Oh, yeah, that'll go down well, I'm sure. Let's finish up the final talking point. Let's talk about Harry Sheasel. Is that his name? I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, Sheasel.
Yeah. I'll put best debut ever. I put that in as a question as if I know other good debuts that other players have had. I don't. He was elite playing off the half-back line in a team that we thought would struggle, and North, of course, got the win. And, it was a very, very, very good performance from him, and in a position in which I didn't think he would play. I had him kicking a couple of goals in my multi, so just quietly, and that didn't get up. So gamble responsibly. But what did you make of his performance quickly?
It was insane, wasn't it? It was insane. It wasn't a surprise, I don't think, for anyone who followed his draft career. He's a very astute footballer. I think Clarkson's showing he's a genius as well, playing him more half-back, which we didn't see at Sandringham, but it allowed him to get into the game. And it's amazing a player like him who has very similar traits to Jack Martin as a junior, in the terms of he's an X-Factor killer, of playing him at half-back and getting him some cheap touches early on. As the game went on, them touches helped him out. And as for the best debut ever, I've only been here a short time, but I would say that Toby Green's was pretty good from memory, wasn't it? 2012, I'd just really started noticing football, but that was like nearly 30 touches. Barlow had a ridiculous game. But I'd say, based on the team he plays for, phenomenal. And I think, he's real superstar.
Yes, very much so. And Nathan, how about next week you come on with Pom, and then we can see who the real culprit is in that regard. Because and maybe you, Pom, and maybe you. We don't actually know.
It's 100% me. Ask Terry.
Yeah, but we've gone over an hour for the two preview shows. Maybe we should just change this to 90 minutes, and then we don't have to worry about time. But thankfully, there's no show on after this. Which if there was, then God help whoever would have been after us. But I agree. I think his performance was elite. I obviously knew about him. Obviously don't keep a massive eye on the draft just because I just don't keep a massive eye on it. But I knew that this bloke had talent, and surprised to see him off the half-back line. To be honest, I thought he would play forward, but he played there and played very well, and was a real key player. I wouldn't say key, like super key player, but in North's win, which they very much needed. And I think he's in safe hands with Clarko as well. So good stuff for Sheasel, and Leo probably got the Rising Star nomination as well for this week, which is no surprise to anyone. Also, I feel like we would be negligent to not bring up what the talk about him and a lot of other things regarding him in the recent days. Just so disappointing that off-field shenanigans takes away from what was a very, very good debut for a very, very young and talented and humble and smooth operator that is Sheasel. But hopefully he can block out all the external and keep doing what he's doing.
Can I just say again, Gil, Mickey Mouse leadership again. On a weekend, this kid made his debut, being the first practicing Jewish player in a country that has probably its only real relevance globally outside of two wars, is how it opened its doors en masse to the Jewish that were affected during the Holocaust. So a proud history of lineage, a proud statement around Jewish countries as well who revere the Australians for opening their doors, getting them as far away from tyranny as possible, that on a weekend we had idiots go to our parliament and drop the most horrific hand gesture a human can make, an emblem of hate, an emblem that everyone in chat's family probably were a part of, helping deliver the world from the last true great evil. That we have dickheads who happen to be Carlton fans going on posts and making comments about his Jewish nature in 2023 alarm me. And what alarms me further still is North Melbourne have been quick to support Taron Thomas, who has committed a heinous crime, who, if the club kicked him out, should be supported, really, but they've supported him. No statement from them about them words. And the AFL, when this has been an Indigenous player, when this has been Adam Sard, they have done the right thing and they have created education around it because genuinely, believe it or not, young people need real-life examples. And my kids have seen these anti-Jewish statements, and suddenly it's made all the war stories I pass on to my kids from my pop who served really poignant because they see it. They can physically touch and smell it and see it happening again. The fact the AFL hasn't acknowledged this and all they've done is, block the guy from 7 AFL. Disgrace, because this country has a large, huge Jewish population. And the reason it's so huge is because this country opened its doors. The history, the most relevant part of Australia's history, something they can cling on to being proud of, is that absolute disgrace from the AFL. Because if this was an Indigenous player, this was Adam Sard, history has said the AFL, if anything, go over the top because it's the minority doing it. But speak to some Jewish people of our community, of our Carlton community, they'll tell you that this is a regular thing as well. This is a real regular thing. You are looking at a people who are probably the most prosecuted and persecuted in the history of humanity. This probably goes far back, probably is up there with race, with colour. That's how old it is. The fact the AFL hasn't done anything, made any statement for a kid who's played one fucking game of AFL and his greatest day of his life, a great celebration on a day Nazism returned to these shores, the fact not one fucking statement has been made blags my little head.
Yeah, couldn't put it better myself. I feel like it's important to highlight because, like you said, we need education. We need people to be aware of this, and we need people to really open their eyes and open their ears and listen and become educated. And it's like no one wanted to speak about this. I didn't no one would, but it's such a big topic, and it definitely happened that it would be negligent of us to not bring it up and at least try and educate people and understand, or get people to understand how just absurdly stupid everything has happened on what, like you said, on what should be this guy's proudest day to date and his family's proudest day of him. It's been marred and there's just been a massive stain over it, just piss poor from everyone involved. And it's one of those things. I think we've spoken about this at length last year, and because this isn't the first time, this will continue to happen. Shit like this will continue to happen. We spoke about this last week or last year at length. We're in a period of society where we are correcting, and are just waiting until shit like this is past the point of where it's an occurrence, at least semi-commonly, which it shouldn't be. However, the more it happens and the more no consequences come from it other than being blocked by a Twitter account, is the more it's screaming to me that we may just be living in a very, at least in this regard, a dystopian reality in which this will just continue to happen, which...
The problem is AFL forget as well, intelligent people who notice that. Just imagine if Harry Sheezel was Indigenous and the post was Harry Sheezel, round one rising star, and someone commented, he's only black. Who cares? He's only black. Imagine the feedback. Imagine if that was a member of our great Muslim community. He's only a Muslim, right? The AFL would stamp that. Intelligent people, they'll see, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Who cares? It's only Jewish. I tell Jewish jokes, quality banter. Then intelligent people who have got a bit of an evil persuasion then can twist that and go, oh, it's selective. Selective. It's a selective segregation. Do you know what I mean? It's a selected what we can be offended by. Oh, I'm offended by the pride flags. Oh, you didn't stick up for my Jewish friends, though, but you'll stick up for the LGBTI community. That offends me. That is where this leads. When you're not consistent, inconsistency is exploited by intelligent, stupid people. And that's where it'll lead, because that was, for me, obvious. So do you know what I mean? You think this century, 23 years, one Jewish player has come through the system. One Jewish player in a country that has a high amount. Yes, I understand their religion, and I understand that it's very suppressive to play sport because they have very strict regimes. So that makes it even more amazing he's there. This should be a great moment where he's a poster boy, because for a lot of people, it'll be like when Michael Thomas played for Rangers when I was a kid. I didn't see many black people in my society. I came from a 100% white school at primary school. I didn't see one. There was a handful of Indians, but they were so normalized to us because that's a large part. Indians coming over in the 70s, it was normal to me, but I didn't see my first real African origin person. So I was in the second year, but it was Michael Thomas that taught me that and taught me racism. I'd heard don't be racist. I saw the effect on him. This is a huge thing for me. And I understand what Paul's saying. It's a slippery slope. How is it though? I don't understand how when people try and twist it and go, well, freedom of speech allows Nazis. It has to allow Nazis because then you can't be gay. If you segregate Nazis, you have to segregate gay people. Ridiculous. Gay people don't preach hate. Gay people aren't responsible for the death of indiscriminate 6 million people in a global conflict that killed over 50 million people who served and protected the weak and the vulnerable, right? They don't represent that. Nazism does. And by extension, the fact that any blue-blooded Australian, British person, French, American could ever be against the Jewish when your forefathers bled because they wanted to protect is beyond me. And honestly, there is a lot of countries that will accept you, right? Will accept you as a human being where you can piss off to if you think that's acceptable. They'll accept you with open arms because that's not what this great nation stands for.
Yes, I could not put it any better, could not agree anymore. And just bringing it back to Sheasel for a moment, I hope he's got, I trust that he's got good people around him, and I trust that he has the right support network, because a lot of pressure is going to be put on his shoulders, maybe unjustifiably so, because he's still only 18, he's still a kid. He still has a lot of learning to do himself, but he's now subject to this, and he will be subject to responses and statements and reactions in a similar way to in which Adam Sard is doing great work for his community as well. So sending all love to Sheasel, and hopefully he can shut the haters up by putting in another 30 touches and potentially his first goal next week for North. Hopefully that can happen. But let's finish things up, slightly lighter topic, some round two predictions. And as we did this last week, and as we will continue to do it for the rest of the year, I'm just going to rattle through the games and just what team's going to win. No explanation.
Am I tipping Nathan's? I'll do well for you, Nath. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, we should have kept count last week. I'll go back and watch and we'll and I'll tally it up and we'll see who can win at the end of the year. But yeah, Pom, you are representing Nathan, so
I've got your back, Nath.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start. One, just no explanation. Carlton, Geelong.
Yeah. Geelong.
Carlton. Brisbane, Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Brisbane. Collingwood, Port Adelaide.
Pies.
Port Adelaide. Adelaide, Richmond.
Richmond.
Adelaide. Western Bulldogs, St Kilda.
Saints.
I agree, St Kilda. Fremantle, North.
Fremantle.
North. Oh, yeah. Yeah, North. Oh, yeah. Sydney, Hawthorn.
Sydney.
Sydney. Bombers, Suns.
Oh, feel filth. Bombers.
Suns. West Coast, the Giants.
Eagles.
GWS. We disagreed on everyone.
It's Nath. It's all right. We're back, baby. We're big time.
Either one of us is going to get 7 and the other one's going to get none. But I think we only agreed on we literally only agreed on St Kilda, and then Sydney. So they're the only 2 games we agreed on. And there you go. There you go. You did it well. You did it well. So maybe Nathan has been represented well. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think that's it. An hour 15. Maybe it is me. Maybe it is me. Maybe it's Pom. I don't know. But thank you very much for joining me, Pom, as we finish up round 2, episode 4. I think it is of the rest for season 2023. Thank you once again for coming on very last minute. You were fabulous as always. Always a pleasure, never a chore. Nathan will be returning next week, hopefully. Maybe I'll be gone and then we can have a different roster. But yes, make sure you subscribe to the Blue Broad YouTube channel, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Pom, once again, thank you very much once again. See you guys next time and goodbye.
See ya.